Hey everyone, and thanks for checking out another one of our deck techs. This time we're bringing you a Pauper deck that has the potential, with a God Hand, to swing 52 trample damage on turn 3. That's right, turn 3. More realistically, it can swing 30 trample damage on turn 3 and consistently swing for lethal on turn 4. Now, in true Izzet fashion, this deck wants to do it all in one turn, 2 turns if it really has to. The vast majority of this deck consists of cards designed to draw more cards that can be played on the turn that you're playing them. Which brings us to the only creatures in the deck. We have Kiln Fiend and Nivix Cyclops. We run 4 copies of each, and your opening hand really needs to have one of them. You really don't want to be digging for 3 or 4 turns while you're looking for one. That would just be too difficult to come back from. The idea of this deck is to have either the Kiln Fiend on the field on turn 2, or the Nivix Cyclops on the field on turn 3, and then swinging, hopefully, for lethal on the next turn. Now, both the Kiln Fiend and the Cyclops have, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +3/+0 until end of turn, with the Cyclops having an addition of, and this creature can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender. So the turn after they are cast, we want to be playing as many of the deck's 35 instants and sorcery spells as possible, and trigger that +3/+0 as many times as possible as well. So let's take a look at the sorceries we'll have to choose from to help us line up that big swing. We have 4 copies each of Ponder and Preordain to help us dig and find more spells to cast and pump our guys. We also have 4 copies of Gitaxian Probe. Now, depending on the deck you're playing against, you may want to play the Probe very first, just to make sure they don't have some kind of viable removal in their hand, and thus shutting down your potential big lethal swing. We also have 2 copies of Slip Through Space, which gives us evasion, a +3/+0 buff on the trigger, and another card into our hand, so that's just solid value right there. The bulk of our deck is comprised of instants. Here we have more ways to put cards into our hands and trigger our +3/+0. We have 1 copy of Brainstorm and 3 copies of Gush. Now, the ideal way to cast Gush is to pay the alternative cost of returning 2 islands to your hand after you've already tapped them for mana. So you're getting at least 2 triggers of the +3/+0, essentially giving our creatures +6/+0 at the very least. Now, we have 3 copies of Shadow Rift, which reads, target creature gains Shadow until end of turn and draw a card. So Shadow means that it can only block or be blocked by other creatures with Shadow, so it's the next best thing to unblockable. Plus, it puts another card into your hand, once again feeding into more spells that you can hopefully play that turn for that many more +3/+0 triggers. We have 4 copies of Mutagenic Growth that we can only cast by paying 2 life, but with our trigger from the instant being played, our buff actually turns into a +5/+2, so it's well worth it. We also run a 3rd card that uses Phyrexian mana, and that's 3 copies of Apostle's Blessing. Now, we don't have a way to create white mana, just like the green, but we're using our life as a resource, so we really don't care. We're hopefully doing this all in 1 turn, so it doesn't matter. For 2 life, essentially, and a generic mana, we can save our guy from a kill spell, give him a form of evasion, plus put that +3/+0 trigger on him, so it's just value all the way around. We also have 4 lightning bolts for blocker removal or just to deal 3 to the face, plus, you guessed it, another +3/+0 trigger. This next card is where this deck can get really nuts. Temur Battle Rage. This card gives our creature double strike, which is great by itself. But the Ferocious trigger is what makes this card absolutely bonkers in this deck. It reads, that creature also gains trample until end of turn if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. So you cast this, which will trigger your +3/+0 buff on our creature. Then when the spell resolves and it checks the board state, our creature with the buff will automatically trigger Ferocious. So you just gave your creature +3/+0, double strike, and trample for 2 mana. So if on turn 3 we have our Kiln Fiend out, we cast Gitaxian Probe, Ponder, Mutagenic Growth, Temur Battle Rage, and then Gush by returning 2 islands to our hand, we're swinging with an 18-4 with double strike and trample. Good game, sir. Now, our sideboard is pretty straightforward. We have 2 Ancient Grudge for Artifact Hate. We have an extra Brainstorm in case we don't see a need for 3 Apostles' Blessings, and more card draw is always good. We have 1 Daze and 2 Dispel in case they have something to interrupt our early game lethal swing that we're trying to put through. We have 2 Delver of Secrets in case they have some early game flyers, and we have Electrickery for those token generator decks. If you've ever played Pauper Squirrels or against it, you'll completely know what this is good for. Fever Charm is there as an alternative pump spell, or on the off chance that you find yourself facing a wizard tribal deck, because those are all over the place out there. And then lastly, we have Fling. If your opponent seems to be thwarting like half of the damage you're trying to put through, or you just can't seem to get that last 6 or so points of damage through, Fling is our answer. You just pump and launch away. Well, that about wraps up our deck tech for today. If you happen to play this, like at some kind of organized event or just in your circle of friends, let us know how it turned out. Things you might change, things you liked, things you didn't like, whatever. You loved it or you absolutely hated it. Either way, we want to hear. Thank you very much for watching today, and as always, you can check us out at Facebook and Twitter at ChuckwagonMTG.